Days of Our Lives spoilers November 28th. Guess who's in the DiMera family crypt? Days of Our Lives spoilers for Friday, November 28th. Finish off a festive holiday week with some major celebrations and an even bigger revelation. Key takeaways. Who kidnapped Tony and Kristen? The case of the missing Horton guest. Love at the Hernandez house. Next on Days. Kristen, Stacy Hayduk, and Tony, Theo Penglis, have been spending their downtime while locked in a crypt reliving the bad old days of being a DiMera and speculating about who might have locked them up there. Vivian, Louise Sorrell, popped up as a popular option, but she likes to bury people alive without food and water, so they decided it couldn't be her. Well, it's time for them to find out who exactly it is. And, yes, it's a member of the family, all right? Empty chairs at empty tables. Chad, Billy Flynn, is a DiMera, but he's pretty much aligned himself with the Hortons ever since he married Abigail, Marcy Miller. But it's lining up to be a pretty uncomfortable Thanksgiving this year, since Jennifer, Melissa Reeves, has announced her plans to sue Chad for custody of Thomas, Carrie Christopher, and Charlotte. And poor Julie, Susan Seaforth Hayes, gets stuck in the middle. You know, it's her first Thanksgiving without Doug, the late Bill Hayes. Maybe put your own issues on the back burner for a few hours, young people? Sweetness and light. Leo, Greg Ricart, says, I love you, to Javi, Al Calderon, with dessert. Is this a Sweet Bits creation or did Leo really go all out? While Gabby, Sherry Jimenez, says I kind of sort of like you to Philip, John Paul Lavoisier, with an invitation to break bread with the Hernandez family. Now that they've gone public with their relationship, what will Salem have to say about Fabi? Gablip? Gep? The night before Thanksgiving in Salem should have been peaceful, but peace had never been a DiMera specialty. Even the moon seemed wary as it hovered above the DiMera mansion, casting thin blades of silver over the property. Inside, the tension was thick enough to slice with one of Stefano's antique daggers. Chad stood in the study, clutching a letter that had appeared on his desk without explanation. No signature, no return address, only a single typed sentence. Someone you thought dead is waiting for you in the DiMera crypt. He had read it 10 times now. His pulse still kicked just as hard. The DiMera crypt had become Salem's most notorious revolving door, a place where people went to be mourned, resurrected, imprisoned, or occasionally resurrected again. But after so many years of chaos, Chad had made one thing clear to the family. The crypt was no longer to be used as a hideout, storage locker, or makeshift laboratory for morally questionable relatives. And yet here he was, coat in hand, unable to ignore the message. Abigail, Stefano, Kristen. The list of DiMeras who had cheated death long enough to crawl out of that crypt was practically a family tradition now. Don't even think about sneaking out of here. Chad jumped at the voice. Belle stood in the doorway, arms folded, eyes sharp in the dim light. I'm not sneaking, he said too quickly. Belle raised a brow. You've got your crypt face on. Chad frowned. My what? Your crypt face. The look you get whenever someone suggests yet another DiMera has risen from the ashes. I'm your attorney and your friend, not to mention the person who has to clean up your emotional carnage when the crypt turns out to contain raccoons or old mannequins again. This is different, Chad insisted, handing her the note. Belle read it and let out a long sigh, the kind that suggested she should have become a yoga instructor instead of a lawyer. This could be a prank. Or it could be real. Or it could be dangerous. Chad shrugged into his coat. When has the DiMera crypt ever been not dangerous? Belle couldn't argue with that. Fine, she relented. But I'm coming with you. If you get locked inside again, I'm not filling out the missing persons report alone. Before Chad could argue, Belle grabbed her coat and keys and headed for the car. The crypt calls. The drive was quiet except for the soft rumble of the engine and Chad's tapping fingers on the armrest. He kept replaying memories in his head, Abigail's laugh, Andre's smirk, Stefano's commanding presence, Jake's surprised grin, all ghosts of the DiMera past, some loved, some feared, all unforgettable. Who do you think it might be? Belle asked, her tone cautious. I want to say no one, Chad replied. But part of me. He didn't finish. Belle understood. Salem had taught them both that hope and danger usually walked hand in hand. Snowflakes had begun to fall by the time they reached the graveyard. The wind blew fiercely around the tombstones, whispering through the pines like restless spirits. The crypt loomed at the far end, its stone walls darkened by age and history. Chad slowed, scanning the surroundings. The heavy door was slightly ajar. Belle exhaled. Well, that's creepy. Chad swallowed hard. It's an invitation. He pushed the door open, and together they stepped inside. Shadows of DiMera passed. The crypt smelled of dust, candle wax, and secrets. Torches flickered along the walls, though no one had lit them, not recently, anyway. Okay, Belle said softly. This is officially too dramatic, even for your family. Chad moved forward, scanning the alcoves that once housed caskets, coffins, and, occasionally, living people pretending to be dead. The dim firelight painted long shadows across the carved DiMera crests. Hello, Chad called. If someone's in here, show yourself. A faint sound echoed from deeper inside. A shuffle, a breath, or maybe just the crypt settling. Belle stepped close behind him, flashlight in hand. You know, she murmured, in any other town this would end with a raccoon wearing a crown. This is Salem, Chad said. We're not that lucky. They followed the sound into a narrow corridor lined with portraits. Stefano, Jay, Kristen, Tony, Anna, Lexi, all watching them like guardians or judges. Belle slowed as her flashlight illuminated a figure seated at the end of the passage. Chad, she whispered. Chad saw the silhouette. A man, tall, shoulders broad, face turned slightly away. Hope hammered in his chest. For one impossible moment he thought. Abigail? He breathed, knowing it made no sense but unable to stop himself. Belle touched his arm. That's not Abigail. Who are you? Chad demanded. The figure stirred, head lifting. About time you showed up, a voice said, rough, familiar, undeniably alive. The man stepped into the aisle of flickering light, revealing a face Chad never thought he'd see again. Jake. Jake DiMera smirked. Miss me, brother? The return of Jake. Chad stared, mouth open, heart thudding. Jake Lambert, Gabi's late love, Stefan's once-lost twin, a man who had died in a senseless robbery, now stood before him as casually as if he'd just returned from a trip to Chicago. But you were shot, Chad said. You died. We buried you. Jake cracked his neck. Yeah. Complicated story. Belle's legal curiosity vaulted to the forefront. You were declared dead. I personally filed paperwork. Sorry about that, Jake said. I wasn't exactly in a position to protest. Chad stepped forward, eyes scanning his brother. Are you real? Not a ghost, not a hallucination, not something Kristen cloned in a basement.